Hack the planet.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another Wednesday TCM stream. Hoping I'm coming at you live and clear and hopefully better audio this time. Hopefully I'm a bit louder. I'm using a new mic than I was in the previous stream I did, which was actually quite a few weeks back. So welcome to 2025, everyone. I know it's not the first stream of the new year, but it's the first one I'm on. So happy to be here. Let's see who was first. I actually might not have the updated chat, but this was the first message I can see. It looks like Alex with the 15th, but was actually first. So well done. Seeing some familiar names. Nice to see everybody. Welcome, welcome. Happy belated New Year to everybody. A cube is just a low-res sphere. That is true. That's true. It's just a sphere with very minimal polygons. All right, how's everyone doing? Spy a malware cube on malware cube's desk. Yes, I have a little Rubik's cube here, which actually is very pointless if you think about it, because there's no colors, so you can't actually solve it. Or maybe the true answer is that every move you do is a solve, a perfect solve. So that's my that's my motto in life. Yeah, I just thought it was sort of fitting the brand here to have a red cube. How is everyone's day going? My day's going pretty well. Ready to jump into some stuff here in a moment. We're going to do a Cyber Defenders lab, but also just do a little chill AMA kind of stream and see what everyone is up to. Didn't realize your name was a Rubik's Cube reference. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I was like trying to think of what would represent me, and I guess a Rubik's Cube, even though I'm terrible at solving them. It is, yeah. It's really, I just use this on my desk as sort of like a fidget cube, and just, I don't know, keeps me focused when I'm like reading something long or doing something. So it's really, yeah, mental kind of thing. All right. What about some announcements, I guess, because we do have some exciting things today. Let me share my screen here. We have, let me refresh. I'm not sure if it's updated yet. And let me full screen this if I can. The advanced web hacking course that Alex is putting together has, yeah, here we go. We have a new module for out-of-band attacks, right? So actually some really cool stuff here. So, it talks about different out-of-band attacks, server-side request forgery, microservices, different out-of-band attacks related to those. And also, I was talking to Alex about this earlier. There's some sections on cloud environments and targeting metadata endpoints, which I think is really cool. I think a lot of people kind of ask for that kind of stuff. And so different, things to exploit for information leakage, unauthorized access. So if you're doing this, if you're following along on the advanced web hacking course, there is a new module. We been pretty much putting out, or Alex has been pretty much putting out new modules every month almost, and I think there are a few more left that he's working on, which is super exciting. So thought I would shout that out because that is just released now, just today. Also, of course, we have the SOC Level 1 live training. If you haven't heard about it yet, if you have employer budget to use early in the year that you want to jump into a 4-day, almost a week-long class here that we're going to be going through basically all of the core skills related to being a SOC analyst and really getting people set up for success and also to fill in those knowledge gaps for tier 2 and tier 1 and tier 2 SOC roles. This is our class to basically do that in a live format. And I'm really excited to jump into this. There's a lot of new labs that I created for this 4-day event. I think it's going to be really, really cool. So the time is sort of ticking to sign up if you haven't already, because we're starting next Tuesday. So, and we're almost sold out, I think, too, which is really cool to see for our first sort of blue team live training event. So again, if you have the sort of employer budget ready to jump on a live class like this, and if you want to, feel free. Just thought I'd mention that as well. Alrighty, let me switch back here before we jump into the room for today. I'm not sure if this is going to be a long room or short room. It's hard to tell with blue team related stuff, but I do know it's focused on packet captures and analyzing network data. So that might be some people's cup of tea. It might be the bane of some people's existence. All right. Let me catch up on some chat. Which lab? We're going to jump into that in a moment. It's going to be a Cyber Defenders lab, but the link will be going around in chat shortly. What free resources will you suggest for beginners? There's a lot of free resources these days, which is great to see because there's been a huge shift, I guess, in the mindset of people wanting to put out stuff for free, which is awesome. And specifically at TCM, we recently introduced our free tier, which I think is awesome. The Practical Help Desk course, I think, is like one of the best courses you can actually take at TCM, just because it really just provides that foundational stuff. Andrew Bellini did a great job on that. We've been getting amazing reviews on people that have been taking it and doing really well on interviews because of the things and the different labs and tasks they're challenged to do in the course. And it's completely free, right? And there's a bunch of other free tier courses we have as well, and we're also looking to add to those later on this year as well, which I'm excited about. That's my favorite thing we do at TCM, is sort of the free tier stuff, because again, I just always like the idea of giving back as much as we can. But of course, there's also other resources too, right? Like Try Hack Me. They have a ton of free, not only just rooms, but also like pathways that you can go through. And there's going to be some, rooms in the pathway that are going to be subscription based, but the bulk of, what you're learning from each pathway, like the SOC Level 1 or SOC Level 2, you can get a ton of information for free just from Try Hack Me. And you can even spin up the labs, directly for free, which is awesome. I think you get like an hour or so per day, which is just a great resource as well. Hack the Box, of course, has free rooms as well. Cyber Defenders can be free. I think the room we're doing today is completely free as well. There's also Let's Defend if you want to get more hands-on with different cyber range kind of stuff and spinning up your own labs, which is awesome. Will those new labs be added to the SOC 101 course? I assume you mean the labs from the live training. I don't think so, just because I kind of want to keep sort of a value add to that live training stuff. So I want to have the course labs for that live cohort, as well as these sort of bespoke new labs, which are going to be obviously pretty similar. They're going to be around the same sort of topics, but different scenarios, different tracing different attacks, that kind of thing, maybe showing off a couple other techniques here and there. But I am thinking of adding, or at least refreshing, some of the SOC 101 labs, or at least probably just adding new ones, because I sort of set it up in a way where I could go in and add new labs as I please, or different challenges. But the live training is a bit different, just because it's more set up rather than just like a challenge lab. It's more so like like a full-on ticket scenario. Sorry, excuse my throat. But it's kind of it's a bit different, and I think it's going to be really cool. All right. Any other playgrounds like Blue Team Labs? Yep, there's so we're going to be doing the Cyber Defenders Cyber Range, I think it's called today. There's Let's Defend. Obviously, there's Try Hack Me, and a lot of these platforms all just have like free investigations that you can dig into. Obviously, they're all going to have their own subscription-based model for some of their other potentially more advanced rooms or whatever. But the one we're going to be doing today is a retired and I believe free lab from Cyber Defenders Cyber Range. So yeah, there's a lot out there in terms of cyber ranges and free labs that you can do. Could you give me cybersecurity, especially blue team roadmap, if I want to switch from mechanical engineering background? It's hard to suggest like a one size fits all kind of roadmap for everybody. It really, I mean, sorry, I don't know what's going on with my throat. It really depends on, again, like where you're coming from, what your background is, and also what your interests are in the field. Like, blue team is pretty streamlined in a sense that there's certain like entry level roles that you might want to go for, like SOC analyst or security analyst kind of roles. And so with that, obviously, I'm going to suggest the SOC 101 because I think really that's what that course is completely designed for, right? It's the people that want to switch into blue team and want to get that sort of first security analyst role or SOC analyst role, and also people that already are SOC analysts and might want to sort of fill in their knowledge gaps or really just become a better SOC analyst to really set them up into different fields that they can go into down the road in the SOC, or whether that be in more specialized roles. So I think that's honestly the best like handholdy way that I can suggest for getting into the field like that. But of course, like I mentioned earlier, there's Try Hack Me stuff is really good to sort of supplement that, right? Because a lot of people that do the PSAA cert, for example, they supplement all of the learning that they get in the SOC 101 with some of the free Try Hack Me labs and rooms to really build out some of that expertise and some of the tools that we talk about. And again, tools, not everything. So in the SOC 101, we really focus on methodology first, and we show a bunch of different ways that you can achieve the same thing using different tools or using native Windows tools or Linux tools, that kind of thing. So I think getting a good pairing between like a good SOC course, doesn't have to be SOC 101, but obviously that's what I'm going to recommend, and like some good hands-on lab cyber range kind of training like Try Hack Me, I think is a really good pairing that'll get you pretty far. Currently at 57% on your SOC 101 course, and it's a blast learning from you. Awesome, yeah, glad to hear that. Yeah, but we've been getting some really good feedback on the course and the exam as well. So I always love to see that stuff. It's like the reason why I wanted to put this stuff out there is to help people just like you guys, right? What's the best red team or blue team in the next 10 years? Not sure what exactly you mean by that, or if you just mean what is the better side in terms of potentially, I guess, career advancement or job opportunities. I mean, it really does matter. Like it really just has to come down to interest, right? Like a blue or red team, like penetration testing or being a SOC analyst. Either side of the coin is not going to, diminish compared to the other. You kind of need to have both, right? But I mean, blue team is always a safe option. We're always going to need blue teamers. We're always going to need defenders, people not only monitoring but responding, and also hardening systems. Right. So there's a lot of work in that regard, and that's why typically you'll see advice for people to suggest you go down the blue team first, just for getting sort of your foot in the door. But honestly, if your end goal is to become a penetration tester or even go into like advanced red teaming or threat simulation kind of stuff, then I mean, just do that. Right. I think it always helps to have both sides. I think doing something like a SOC kind of job really gets you in the mindset and really gets you exposed to all the different areas of cybersecurity. But at the end of the day, if it's not your calling, if it's not what you want to see yourself doing, even if it's just like specializing in a blue team field, then just do what you more so enjoy, right? Because that's what's going to keep you there longer. That's what's going to keep you enjoying what you're doing. All right, let's at least introduce the lab that we're going to be doing today, because I'm going to keep forgetting. And then we'll take some more questions before we actually jump into it. Because I was saying earlier, I'm not sure how long this challenge is going to take us, because I did one before. I think it was the memory analysis one. And I really had to draw it out because like it would have been complete in like 5 minutes. So it really depends. Like it's not so much like a head scratcher kind of boot to root machine, or like a web kind of penetration testing one. So some of these can be pretty short if you know what you're looking for. So let me flip on the screen share. There we go. So the link should be going around in chat. But this is the lab we're going to be doing. It's from Cyber Defenders. It is called the Open Wire Lab, and it is a free room. So you will just have to create an account on Cyber Defenders if you haven't already. But if we just take a look at some of the information around it, it is a retired room, right? So it is. It's been around for a bit, I guess. But if we look at the scenario here, during your shift as a Tier 2 SOC analyst, you receive an escalation from a Tier 1 analyst regarding a public-facing server. The server has been flagged for making outbound connections to multiple suspicious IPs. That is not good. In response, you initiate the standard incident response protocol, which includes isolating the server from the network to prevent potential lateral movement, or data exfiltration, and obtaining a packet capture from the network security monitoring utility for analysis. Cool. So our task here is to analyze the PCAP, right, and assess for signs of malicious activity. I think, wasn't there a meme that Alex doesn't like PCAPs or something? I remember Arubia saying something about that. So if Alex is watching, you might want to look away, because it looks like we're just dealing with a PCAP to answer these questions. And I already have this downloaded just because it actually took a little bit for some reason. So if I go to my desktop here, I have this openwire.pcap file that I'm just going to basically open up in Wireshark before we get started here. It looks like we have 8 questions to answer as we go through the investigation. I kind of like it. It's kind of, the questions are sort of phrased in a way that walks us through an investigation, which I always like. It's kind of what I try to do for the challenges in the SOC course, for example. I think it's a nice way to guide someone that might be new to performing investigations and not knowing what to ask or what to do next, kind of thing. So that's always fun. I'd love to see a live stream focused on malware analysis, maybe in the books for 2025. Yeah, I think that'd be cool. I definitely have a lot to learn regarding malware analysis specifically. It was never one of my immediate focuses as a role, but more so just as something I enjoyed to do on the side. So I can definitely put something together for that. That would be fun. It would be really cool if we could have Matt Keeley come on for something as well, because he is the author of the practical malware analysis and triage course at TCM, and that guy knows his stuff. So he could run circles around me. But yeah, I think we can definitely do something like that. I don't know many lab scenarios like this or cyber ranges that have actual malware analysis, like static and dynamic analysis. So that would be cool. Should probably put something together myself for that. What course do you recommend in TCM after completing SOC 101? Again, it depends on what you want to do. Like if you enjoyed the SOC 101 content, and if you like that kind of investigative kind of stuff, I would probably stick to more blue team stuff. So the detection engineering course, or even the Windows forensics course, if you like the forensic stuff. And if you think we talked about a lot of little forensic artifacts in the course, well, the Windows forensic course specifically is going to get way more detail in a lot of that stuff. And so I think that would be a great one. Detection engineering as well, if you want to more so be on the detection side and sort of writing and crafting those rules that then get analyzed and investigated. So there's that kind of side to it. But also, if you enjoyed sort of the threat emulation, just the very basic stuff we did in the SOC course, I would go for the PEH, right? Because that's basically taking that in a much more advanced step, and sort of seeing it from the attacker's side in much more detail. So um, again, you have options is what I'm saying, depending on what piques your interest. I think the SOC course gives you a good foundation for a lot of different avenues in cybersecurity, and it's just a matter of like what domain from the course really stuck out to me, or what did I enjoy doing the most, that kind of thing. So that's why I like Blue Team. There's a lot of different avenues you can go down. All right, let's take this food question, and then we will jump into the lab, and then we'll have. I assume this is not going to take too long, so we can have a bit of Q&A at the end as well. Cajun seasoned fries done as poutine. That might be too much flavor for me. Again, I've said this before. I like keeping it really simple, and just not introducing as many flavors as possible when I'm eating poutine. In general, though, I love Cajun seasoned fries. Just maybe not in a poutine. All right. Let's hop over to this challenge. OpenWire Lab. Okay, so I have the PCAP downloaded. If you're following along, again, you can sign up for an account. On Cyber Defenders, you can download the lab files and basically get it onto your system. It'll just download as a zip file, yeah, and then you extract it with this password of cyberdefenders.org. All right. So let me just open this. I already have it opened in Wireshark, and I'll try to make this a bit bigger. I just learned recently that you can make stuff bigger in the Wireshark user interface, which is nice. Because I'm always like squinting, even just like from this, distance. So I can't imagine how hard it must be for if I'm like streaming this. So it's nice to see that we can zoom in. And so we have a bunch of stuff here. The first thing I'd like to do usually when I'm looking at a PCAP is sort of just get sort of my bearings and understanding what's going on. So the place that does that for me is under statistics, under capture file properties. And this is going to give us a ton of information, more so like metadata about the packet capture, just so we know what we're dealing with, right? So we can see things, again, like the name, the length, the different hash values related to the PCAP, right? So if we're like using a chain of custody or something, and we're making sure that all of this evidence is documented, we want to make sure we're working with the right file, and we can verify that using the hash, right? But we have things like under time here. We can see when the first packet was sent, and also when the last packet was captured, sort of thing, right? And the elapsed time between those. So it looks like we have 4 minutes here, or 5 minutes. And the reason why we kind of like to look at these things before we dive in is because what if this is not the correct timeline, right? Like what if, so it mentions in the challenge here that the PCAP was captured from the network security monitoring tool, right? What if we have the wrong log, right? What if we're not looking at the actual time in which the quote unquote malicious activity occurred? We could waste a whole ton of time diving into a PCAP that isn't actually relevant to our investigation, right? So again, this kind of metadata is pretty interesting. Packet count as well, which is a good one to know, like how many packets are we actually dealing with? In this case, just under 5,000, which is like nothing, right? So this is going to be pretty manageable for us, right? So again, that's one of the first things I like to do in Wireshark. The other thing to sort of, again, get my bearings here is to look at what protocols are we even dealing with, right? And we can do that under protocol hierarchy. And the way we can sort of make sense of this doesn't look like I can zoom in, unfortunately, but it's basically giving us like a tree-like structure, or like a folder-like structure of what actual protocols we're speaking to each other in this packet capture, right? So you can see here, everything is pretty much under IPv4, and everything's under the TCP, or Transmission Control Protocol. And under that, we have a few different protocols of interest. We actually just have 3, it looks like. So we have transport layer security, right? So we have some encrypted, potentially HTTPS packets. We have OpenWire, which I'm not very familiar with. So that's a protocol in itself. And we also have just basic HTTP, right? So unencrypted kind of stuff. And this is really interesting for us from an investigative standpoint, because again, it's unencrypted. So we can really dive into it, right? So that's usually like one of the low-hanging fruit stuff. If we have unencrypted HTTP traffic in our capture, it's one of the first things I like to look at within reason, within context. So it's good to know that we have some of that there. And so really, we just have 3 protocols to deal with. Probably can't get much from anything encrypted, so that's not where we'll focus too much of our time initially. Are you late? Not really. We're just sort of diving into this packet capture here. We're doing a room. Whoops, I opened up Thunderbird. We're just doing a room from the Cyber Defenders cyber range here called Open Wire Lab, and it's just basically investigating a PCAP. And we're just looking at sort of the metadata around that. And so, again, there we go, right? So the reason why unencrypted HTTP traffic is useful is because we can see actual requests like this, which we have not even dug into anything yet. We can already see it's grabbing, this endpoint was grabbing an invoice.xml file, right? So let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's look at basically what is the first question, right? So by identifying the command and control IP address, we can block traffic to and from this IP, helping to contain the breach and prevent further data exfiltration or command execution. Can you provide the IP of the command and control server that communicated with our server? Okay, so basically what IP is the attacker in this case? So that kind of assumes a few things, right? It assumes we figured out who the attacker is and what they really did, right? So another thing we can do under statistics here is go under conversations. This is a very useful statistic as well, because we can go under IPv4, as you can see here. And unfortunately, again, I can't zoom in. But we can see, you know, who was talking to who in this capture, right? What IP address was talking to which IP address, like the sort of top talkers that we can sort of sort by, right? In this case, we have 84 dot whatever talking to 134 dot whatever. We also have 134 talking to 128, and then 146 talking to 134. And so because we have 134 in all of these entries, so it looks like we just have 3 different conversations going on. This is sort of the link between them, right? This IP address of 134.209.197.3. So I'm assuming this is the endpoint in question, right? Because that's what's being communicated to pretty much in all of these things. So that kind of hints me towards that. If we sort by packets A to B, we can see where the bulk of the conversation was occurring between. And it looks like it's 146 going to 134. And so could be our attacker, at least in this sort of cyber range scenario where we, again, don't have much traffic to go off of. Usually the bulk of the traffic in these little lab scenarios is going to be the attacker, but we shouldn't assume that, right? We should actually try to verify. And so when we think about our investigative questions, we could say, well, I think, or our hypothesis rather, we could say, you know, I think 146.190.21.92 is our attacker because XXY, right? Because the packet count, right? And because of the actual protocols that they were speaking to each other. So, and now we can start doing analysis to sort of dive in and sort of either support our hypothesis or challenge it, right? So that's the kind of way I like to structure investigations. And so what we can do really is, again, we can start by looking at HTTP, right? Because again, it's unencrypted. It's very easy for us to sort of get more information about the actual packet payload and packet content within that. So I can just use the protocol itself as a display filter here and run that. And it looks like we only have 6 packets to go through. So again, we just extremely narrowed it down. And if we look at the source and destination, it looks like it is that 134 going to 146 and sort of back and forth, right? So what we can do now, because we don't have many packets to go through, I'm just going to right click on this first one here, where it's actually, as you can see, making a GET request to invoice.xml. I'm going to right click on that and click on follow, and then go to the HTTP stream, right? And so Wireshark, again, is very powerful. It knows what packet sort of communicated with what, like it knows the source and destination. It can actually follow these streams using TCP basically, and also the protocol itself of HTTP, and sort of present that graphically for us in terms of what that conversation really looked like, right? So if we click on the HTTP stream, well, we're actually getting request and response from the endpoint to the server and so forth, right? And so that's very useful for us because we can now, these are 2 individual packets. It kind of just displayed them. Here's the request, here's the response. So yeah, Wireshark is great for this kind of stuff. So if we take a look at the request, it looks like it's grabbing this invoice.xml. It's using Java, so some sort of Java application to do that. So this might actually be the server, right? And again, if we look at, where is it? This one. So the source of 134.209.197. So that, again, kind of is in line with our assumption that this was the server in question or the victim. And the response is coming from this request right here. And so again, looks like some sort of Java application was grabbing this invoice file over the network, going to this host of the 146. And this is the response from that host saying basically it was a 200 OK. They stood up a simple HTTP Python server. So that's a little suspicious, right? That's not an actual web server that would be up typically in the wild. That sounds like something an attacker quickly spun up so they could host something, right? If you ever, again, if you've done the SOC course, or if you do like the PEH, it's very common to just stand up a Python web server to host like payloads or something just for download. I'm going to assume that's what that was. If we look at the actual content of what was being hosted or what was downloaded, we again have this XML file with a bunch of weird stuff here. And it looks like command injection. Right, so I don't exactly know what all of this is doing, but it looks like we have the Java class of process builder, which I think is to run, as I can sort of infer here, is to run operating system commands. So it looks like it's opening something with open tac A. It's trying to open the calculator for some reason, maybe as a proof of concept. And then that's not good. It runs bash with the C argument to basically run a command, right? And then it's running curl to save something under temp/docker. And it's reaching out to this IP address, which is a different one than we originally saw. And it's saving it as Docker, making it executable, and then running it, right? Okay, so that does not look like it should be doing that, right? So someone spun up a Python server here, was hosting this XML file, and it was basically telling this Java application to execute this kind of stuff and actually reach out and download and execute this file, whatever this Docker file is. Okay, so I think that's pretty clear that this 146 was the attacker in that case. So let's try it. I open Thunderbird again. I need to remove that. Okay, let's go back here. 146.190.2192. All right, there we go. Looks like that was right. Did everyone understand how we got there? We had 3 IP addresses in scope for this packet capture, and for some reason this one was hosting an odd or a suspicious looking web server with some questionable XML, potentially command injection in it. So again, I'm assuming this is going to be the attacker here. All right, question 2. Initial entry points are critical to trace back the attack vector. What is the port number of the service the adversary exploited? Okay, what we should do is actually add the port number to our columns list, right? That's usually something I do. Just in general, it's good practice. So if we go under preferences, under columns, we can actually add columns here. So I'm just going to call this source port. I'm going to add another one here called destination port, or just dest port. And what we can do is change the type here and actually pick a data value, like a field in Wireshark, to actually serve as that column, right? So I'm going to find source port here. And for destination port, I'm going to find destination port. Excellent. And I'm actually going to try to move these so it makes more sense after source here. If that works. Nope. There we go. Source port, and then destination IP, and then destination port. Perfect. Cool. Another thing we can do here, just from, again, if we're sort of in the investigation mindset here, is we can change the time display format and do something like UTC, right? So we can do UTC date and time of day. Again, just for documentation purposes. I don't think we're actually going to need the timestamps for this challenge, but again, it's good to have, proper timestamps. I think by default, it just shows you the sort of delta or the time between the first and next packet. So not always ideal. All right. Yeah, I will take questions after we get through this. I'll try to speed run the rest of this investigation. So we'll see. So the next question was, what port basically was the port number of the service the adversary exploited? And so we could think it was like HTTP, right? Over, I guess, port 8000, because that's what was sort of used to, force the endpoint to download this file. I don't think that was exploited, though. I don't think this is the service in question. I think this XML file was used to then exploit whatever was being hosted. Whatever was being hosted by that server, because we did see that Java user agent there, which isn't telling us too much, but it is telling us it's some sort of Java application, right? If you recall, we had this protocol of OpenWire, and I'm assuming because the name of the challenge is OpenWire, that's going to come into play at some point. But what actually is that? So when I don't know something, I'm going to trust old Google. And there we go. Yeah, Apache ActiveMQ, the Apache Software Foundation. So OpenWire is a protocol, right? It's a networking protocol. It's designed for working with message-oriented middleware. All right, whatever the heck that means. However, we do have this software here that apparently uses this protocol called Apache ActiveMQ. OpenWire is our cross-language wire protocol. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so Java OpenWire transport is the default transport. So that makes sense, right? So it's probably hosting this application, and whatever it does, I have no idea what this does, and I probably don't care to know. If this was my organization, I would want to figure out what this is and what this server actually does. But in this case, we could go down a rabbit hole and try to understand the wire protocol and what this server is actually doing here. But it seemingly takes in some sort of XML data that the attacker abused. And so let's try to figure out what port OpenWire or this ActiveMQ kind of thing runs on. So we can run OpenWire port and see what we get. By default, there's a blah, blah, blah. OpenWire connections on port 6161. Okay. Did we see that anywhere? Now that we have our destination port? Yeah, we do. 6161. The first packet in the list is headed to this port. And if we look at the protocol, okay, TCP, now we have OpenWire. There we go. Assuming it's 6161 then. Actually, let's see if we can make sense of this data. I don't know if it's encrypted or what. I guess not. Okay, so we have some... Oh, this might be the actual request that was exploited, right? So it looks like we have some protocol-specific, stuff coming from the web server, right? Or I don't know. I keep saying web server. Whatever this Apache MQ server is. So we have some options to set. I guess this is kind of like a hello message or kind of like a setup, provide me your configuration options or whatever. And it looks like the attacker in this case replied back using, I guess, some sort of exploit, using this class path XML application context. And I don't really know what any of this does, but all I can see is this sort of indicator of compromise here, which is, again, this URL that's pointing to that IP address that we identified over port 8000, which is where the Python web server was being hosted, and of course the invoice.xml, right? So I don't care about any of this stuff. All I know is that something related to this URL was sort of invoked and sent to basically, I guess, cause that request to download the XML file and then execute it. So I'm going to assume that is the port of 6161. No, 61616. Yes. Cool. Following up on the previous question, what is the name of the service found to be vulnerable? We just figured that out. Apache OpenWire. Or no, Apache ActiveMQ. There you go. Almost halfway through. The attacker's infrastructure often involves multiple components. What is the IP of the second command and control server? We already found that out, right? If we go back, looking at HTTP, if we look at the invoice, you can see it reached out to this other IP address to download this Docker file, right? I don't know if that's actually a Docker file, but it's named Docker, right? And it's saved to temp /docker. So that is going to be the, I guess, second stage of this attack, right? So the initial exploit was basically just to cause the server to make that request to download the initial payload, I guess, and then this payload is going to reach out and download this file onto the actual operating system or onto the server. All right. What was the hint for that? Actually, I like going through the hints after I solve the questions, just because it can sort of maybe tell you a different way you could have done something. Analyze the network traffic to identify suspicious external. Yeah, so we did that. Look for open wire related traffic. We actually didn't do that right away. We just looked at HTTP because, again, that's sort of a low-hanging fruit kind of thing. Okay, we definitely did not do this, but we did find, again, the same sort of indicator here, right? So again, there's always multiple ways to do things, especially when it comes to network traffic analysis or endpoint analysis. There's always different techniques. Yeah, so we found that out. Open wire service typically runs on well-known ports. We literally just Googled that and figured it out. Yeah, cool. Actually, oh, I thought it was going to say Apache MQ somewhere. I guess we just had to Google to figure that out. Okay. So question 5, attackers usually leave traces on the disk. We already figured that out. What is the name of the reverse shell executable dropped on server? So it is a reverse shell, and it's called Docker, and it's saved in /temp/docker, as we can sort of figure out by sort of dissecting this curl command. So it's just called Docker. What Java class was invoked by the XML to run the exploit? All of these can be answered in the same response. What is the Java class? Process builder? Right? And I'm going to say that is to do something with actually running processes on the system. Why don't we Google that if we... Oh, what Java class? Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, java.lang.processBuilder. There we go. And again, I kind of want to figure out what this is. I'm just going to Google the name of the class here. And we're brought to sort of the Oracle Help Center here. Yeah, there we go. Stop it. Decline. So, class, process builder. This class is used to create operating system processes. All right. Maybe we want to disable this class on the server. Maybe we don't want to be running. It's kind of like running exec, right? It's just like, or yeah, there's other classes and other languages that do this sort of same thing. There's, PHP, for example, and it's like, well, if you don't need to run operating system commands in your use case, maybe don't. Maybe set up some monitoring at least, or maybe don't allow that. To better understand the specific security flaw exploited, can you identify the CVE identifier related to the vulnerability? Okay. Okay. Well, we can just Google, right? Apache MQ CVE. I'm assuming remote code execution, so RCE. And there we go. CVE 2023, so not too old, kind of recent. 46604 was recently announced, caused quite a bit of traffic on the mailing list. Okay, what is the actual vulnerability, though? The protocol marshaller is vulnerable to remote code execution. This might allow a remote attacker with network access to the Java-based OpenWire broker to run arbitrary shell commands. So that sounds pretty similar to what we're looking at. Does it say anything about XML? Okay, kind of. Yeah. Okay. So this class, not only present on the broker, is extremely common client-side dependency as well. It has a constructor which takes a string, which can be an HTTP URL. That is what we saw. If we go back into Wireshark, and search for OpenWire, we saw this, I think, in this one, was it? Yeah, so this is the string that it takes a URL, and what does it do with it? Pointing to an XML application, invoice.xml. Yeah, and then it uses this class to load malicious XML from the file somewhere on network over HTTP. Defines arbitrary code to be run on the machine with this vulnerability. Exactly. That's exactly what we saw when it configured that URL and then downloaded or sort of like read that XML and executed the code. Cool. All right, so this has to be it. CVE 2023-4404. Nice. Last question. There we go. That was quick. As part of addressing the vulnerability, the vendor implemented a validation step to prevent exploitation. Specify the Java class and method where this validation step was added. Okay, I'm assuming that might be in this document somewhere. If we search for remediation, no. All right, well, let's just search remediation. None of these include remediation. Okay, let's try this. Trend micro. Okay, let me search now for remediation. Nope. What is the question asking? Validation step. Okay, let's search for validation. There we go. Yeah. Issue pertaining to the validation of the throwable class types. I really don't know Java, by the way. I took a first-year Java course in university, and I think I slept through at least 60% of the course. So a lot of this is a different language to me. Okay, we can see here, based on the patch difference, right? So by looking at what was patched in the sort of update or the remediation update, folks are able to find that they've added this validate is throwable method to the base data stream Marshall class. And that has to be the answer. Class method. So this is the class base data stream, which we can see here, to the marshaller, which again, we figured out was the thing that was vulnerable. And it added validate is throwable. Incorrect. That's the right format. Does it have to be a dot? No. That is the validation thing, right? Validate is throwable. They just want the method, maybe? Yeah. No, specify the Java class and method where this validation step was added. Is this the class? Create throwable? And then they added this. No, because this is the class. Yeah, the validate is throwable method is included in the base stream data stream Marshall class. I'm pretty sure that's the answer, what I originally had. Create throwable? Maybe. Like, does this question really matter? Like, create throwable. Oh, format. Nope. Oh, that was both methods. Yeah. Okay. This is the class. This has to be the class. And then we have validate is throwable. We tried that. Do we need the brackets there? No. Create throwable. No. Oops. I submitted too many answers. All right, if we can't get this, I mean, this is kind of just a odd question. Because, like, we understand what was added. I think they just want a specific format that they're not accepting for some reason. And I've tried it with the colon. I've tried it with the dot. I've tried both validate is throwable, which is the method that they've included in the patch. And I've also tried this method here because this is kind of like encapsulating everything, I guess. I don't know. I could be missing something very funny. I'm just going to try this last one. I have to wait 1 minute. Well, what else can we do while we wait? There's a couple of things we can do, actually. So that Docker file, right, was a reverse shell. And it was sent, I think, over HTTP. So let's sort of extend this challenge a bit while we wait. Yeah, here's the request to grab that Docker file over to that other IP address. We follow the HTTP stream. It's an ELF file, which is like a executable file, but for Linux, right? We can see by the sort of file header here of ELF, and it's called Docker. Again, served on a Python HTTP server with that other IP address that was hosting it. It's a pretty small file, but because this is over HTTP, we can go under File, Export Objects, click on HTTP, and we should be able to find it, right? So we can actually see the invoice that we originally looked at, which is fine, but we have this Docker file that we can just save, and we can actually extract it out of the packet capture and save it over to our desktop for further analysis, right? So we could do more, kind of malware analysis on this file if we wanted to. Or we can just do some basic triage stuff, which probably is all I'm going to stick to here. So if I just run SHA-256-SUM on that Docker file, we get the hash of it. If I run file on it, we can see, again, it is an ELF file here, right? If I can zoom in. And we have the hash value. So what do I like to do with hash values? I like to ask a bunch of antivirus vendors what they think of it. We can do that through VirusTotal. I'm assuming it's going to be, yep, there we go. So it's lighting up red. That is not a good sign. All of these vendors have flagged it as a Metasploit reverse shell, it looks like. Yep, MFS Venom, Metasploit shellcode. If it's been submitted, we can go under behavior usually, and it'll actually decode the payload, right? Yeah, there we go. So we can see the command and control server in this case was pointing to this IP address over port 443, I guess. Interesting. So I guess that that was all of that TLS encrypted traffic that we saw that we couldn't really dig into because it was actually part of this reverse shell. Yeah, so there we go. We're able to go a little bit farther there. I'm assuming that's all we can really dig in here because the rest of this, again, is just that sort of encrypted traffic that we probably can't do much about. And that's all the sort of reverse shell communication back and forth. I don't know what's going on with this question, but create throwable. Oh, is it Marshaller? Was this wrong? Marshaller, yeah. I think the article had it wrong. I guess we broke it. I'm going to assume, nope, that's not right. This question is not not solvable. Okay. Well, we're gonna assume that we got that right because, like, come on, we found the actual patch. We can see what was added. I'm gonna call that one done. And what we can do now is return to some Q&A without the satisfaction of seeing the congrats screen, I guess. Maybe we can look at the hint. Looking into the changes. Yep, we did that. Verifying class yeah. Validate is throwable. An if condition was added in the method. Okay, I'm not spending any more time on this. I'm pretty sure we had it. I'm gonna blame the platform unless someone can tell me what was wrong. Oh, someone has it. I think it's like this. Open wire util. Oh, maybe that's it. Okay, I think we're still banned from submitting at the moment, but I'm just gonna take the L on that. We can hop back over to some Q&A before we end the stream. It's at the top of the hour, anyways. All right. Well, thanks for sticking that one out with me. I mean, we got the bulk of it at least. And let's see, what do we have for questions? Bunch of pinned questions. Let me get to these now. Just open YouTube to continue watching your hacking course and accidentally caught you live. Oh, I assume you mean Heath's practical ethical hacking course. Course doesn't contain extensive networking. I think it contains quite a bit of networking, but I think we've made some modifications, or at least Heath did, to sort of space that out into more separate or sort of topic-oriented courses. So what we're going to be doing is adding a networking course to the free tier on the Academy, which is basically going to be basically all of that sort of networking foundation stuff that I think was originally in the PH, or also additional stuff that we want to include, but doesn't really fit in a more so hacking course. It's kind of more of a prerequisite. But also the practical help desk course, which is out on the free tier, does contain a pretty for being a more help desk focused course, it does contain quite a bit of foundations for networking as well. There's a really good networking section in it. So that's where I would point you for that point. There's also, of course, like if you want to go sort of the Network Plus route, there's like the Jason Dion stuff, the Professor Messer stuff. There's some good courses, again, for free on YouTube, all around learning sort of those networking fundamentals that more so is, again, a sort of prerequisite to doing any kind of ethical hacking related stuff. No offense. Why are we doing basic protocol? I thought y'all did advanced lessons. This is a live stream for people to follow along, and this is that was a free lab that we did. I think it was cool. I think we got to dive into OpenWire. We got to dive into. I mean, there was some basic HTTP stuff, but we got to trace the attack, and that's how the packet capture was presented to us, right? Beginner friendly kind of way. Can you go over the attack flow once more? So I can summarize it. Basically, we found that over HTTP, that sort of invoice request was made to basically download or look through that XML file. And that XML file had some exploit code in it to basically run process commands on the endpoint itself. There was a proof of concept to open up the calculator, but then there was also some malicious sort of code there to spin up the curl utility to download a second stage payload, which was in fact a reverse Metasploit reverse shell, which we identified by extracting it out of the packet capture. And that allowed the attacker to sort of make that reverse shell connection back to their attacker machine and basically, continue the rest of their attack. So again, this lab was just focused. If you look at the challenge page, it's just focused on that initial access and execution, and that's exactly what we were able to identify over just over the network, over the packet capture, right? Tacos or pizza? I think it depends on the day. If it's a Tuesday, tacos. If it's a Friday's more so pizza days, in my opinion. Release date for SOC 201. Nothing set in stone yet, but probably second quarter of the year, within a few months, most likely. But I cannot give a full date on that yet. The bulk of my workload at the moment has been focused on the live stuff, the live training stuff that we're doing next week. So once that's out of the way, it's going to be full steam ahead for SOC 201, basically. How would you document your findings? So basically, any indicators that we came across, right? Like even stuff like that invoice XML file, we'd want to document as, something that was transferred over the network or something that was exploited. All of the IP addresses we want to document in, preferably in a more defanged format, so we can put it in a report. Um, the port numbers as well, but also just like walking through at a high level these sort of steps that were taken on the timeline to basically reproduce that attack, right? So at the start, we had no idea what was going on. We didn't know. What action or what event fit into place where on the timeline. And as we sort of went through the investigation, we could, if we wanted to, do more of a deep dive into looking at the timestamps and everything to really piece things together. But more or less, that was pretty simple in the fact that we could just trace it protocol by protocol and packet by packet and sort of use what we found in the payload of one request and use that sort of as a pivot point to additional requests and such. But really, the sort of mindset I take is that like the first thing we found basically was that invoice XML file, but we didn't know where specifically on the timeline that fit in. And so it's just a matter of either walking backwards or looking at later events to sort of piece together where that needs to fit and what actions took place before it and what actions took place after it. And I think we did a pretty good job at through sort of those questions that were kind of instigating us to go a certain way into walking the attack step by step, right? And so in our documentation, we would want to sort of at a high level talk about each of those steps and provide, again, any indicators of compromise and sort of the impacts and such of each of those steps, basically. What does SOC 201 cover? Good question. So it's going to be pretty different from SOC 101. It's going to be obviously more advanced, but in a way that it's going to have a primary focus on incident response and threat hunting, and also threat emulation as well. And so the way it's going to be structured is pretty much going through the different stages in the MITRE attack at a high level, and basically looking at some of the more advanced analysis and detection techniques that we can dig into for certain tactics and techniques in basically each stage of a typical attack, right? When we think about the MITRE attack framework, it's not like a one-to-one, every attack is going to look a certain way, but the goal is to sort of go through each stage, really deep dive into each step in that sort of model and look at more advanced topics like process injection and different ways to sort of obfuscate malware and also ways to execute and basically all through that kind of thing. So I think it's going to be a real step up from SOC 101. And it's really going to have a lot of assumptions when you start the course. It's going to assume that you're pretty confident with SOC 101 stuff. We're not going to be going over how to use Wireshark, right? We're not going to be going over how to set up a SIM. All of that stuff is going to be sort of assume knowledge at that point. And then we're really just going to dive into more advanced detection scenarios and also more threat emulation as well. So it's going to have, I kind of think of it as it's going to be like a purple team course because for as much detection and analysis we're doing, we're also going to be simulating those attacks. We're not going to be using too many scripts to do that. It's going to be pretty hands-on, which is, I think, going to be pretty unique. All right, everyone. I think we are good to wrap up for today. Sorry if I did not get to your question, but you can always drop it in the Discord and we'll hop on it. But thank you, everyone, again, for really just joining along for that ride there. That was pretty cool. Pretty easy, but pretty cool challenge we did. And hopefully you do some more blue team stuff in the future. And thank you for the help, everyone, as always. And again, thank you for watching and have a great rest of your day, rest of your week, and I will see you probably not next week because I'll be in the training, but probably in a few weeks. We have some cool stuff coming in February specifically for live streams, so I'm excited about that. But yeah, everyone have a great rest of your day and take care.